specialists on the little stuff, you know how important tackle crafting is to me. Making your own tackle. It's just fun when you can make something and catch something on it. And you also know that I have a finesse jig that recently I started making with the Do It Molds Midwestern Finesse head. That's not what it's called. Whatever. It's the Ned Rig one, and I love it. And I love the hook that it comes with, and it gets, I will say, 5 out of 5 stars on all sorts of different criteria. Hookup percentage is one of them. You know, the percentage of when you set the hook on a fish to actually getting him to the boat is another, and just it getting bit. It gets bit. And also it's nice that I have a variety of different sizes to work with. So I'm really, you know, really enjoying that particular finesse jig. But there is one criteria that it does not get 5 out of 5 stars on. And that is how well it goes into brush and comes out clean. It's a little bit snaggy in the brush, and in a creek like this, man, that's where they are. We've actually had some ice storms here recently, and there's a lot of fresh, you'll see it today in this episode, a lot of fresh brush that's been knocked in with the ice storms that we've had. So this episode is going to be about how to reduce brush snags with a finesse jig. So before we get into the techniques that I want to teach you, the rigging, how you rig the trailer, and some other little stuff about fishing a finesse jig in brush, I want to introduce at least one term that I think is important when targeting wood that I will use, and I just want to introduce it. There's kind of 2 different kinds of brush, and what you have here that's right on the surface, this is new stuff, and I call that temporary brush. And if you come back though, that is perma wood. It is a tree trunk that is pretty much permanently part of the scene. Could it be eventually washed out? I don't think this one's going anywhere. Usually it's a big tree like this that loses its roots, falls in, floodwaters sweep it down, and it becomes incorporated into the bank. This one's a little bit separated, but that's kind of rare. I love permawood for big bass. They just, you know, they like that big structure. This little stuff, the next time, you know, this river comes up with a flood, this stuff is gone, and it'll probably pile up in what we got going on right back behind me. So temporary brush and then permawood. Permawood is the preferred target, but permawood collects the temporary stuff, and that's what snags you up. So the first jig quality that we're going to discuss is the weight. How much does the jig weigh? This one just hit one that was a little more than 1/16. This one's a new one that I've just started messing with, that we'll talk about here in a minute. All right, I'm not gonna tell you the answer right away, but we're gonna talk about the weight of a jig and say, here's our underwater brush, okay? Here's jig 1. That weight is 1/4 ounce. Here's jig 2. That weight, 1/16 ounce. Which one comes through this cleaner? You know, it's down there in the water, so it's a little bit more weightless than that, but as it's tumbling through there, which one gets through easier? Well, if you haven't watched the video where I talk about rate of fall, it's sort of a different advantage, but it follows the same trend, fortunately. You definitely want to go with a lighter jig. You want to fish with as light a jig as you can get away with. So this 1/16 ounce jig, I get the privilege to fish. This 1/4 ounce jig, I have to fish. Why do you have to fish heavier? Why do you move, you know, from lighter to heavier? Wind, for sure. Current, depth to a certain extent. Those are the main ones, you know. And today I don't have much wind. It's a shallow creek here, and the current is, you know, it's still low and clear. It's still a fairly moderate flow, but you know, I don't need to go to that 1/4 for sure. The one I'm throwing is actually in between 16th and 8th, so it's perfect for what I'm doing. But that's it. I mean, that's, you know, your weight determination. You want to get away with as light a finesse jig as you possibly can to reduce snags. It also looks more natural in the water. It looks beautiful down there when it comes up over the branches and then flutters down with a very, you know, slow rate of fall. They look at that. Oh. You tugging on that? Did you want that? I'll give it back to you. Here you go. They watch it, and where it floats down, and if you take a, you know, if you've ever fished with live crawfish, you know that they parachute down like this, nice and slow. They're totally vulnerable that way too, but they don't, as they're falling, they don't move fast. They may move fast in the summer, scooting along the bottom, and that's where the crankbait fishing comes into play, but not this time of year. So the trailer that you use can make a big difference in terms of how frequently you snag, or really how deep behind enemy lines you can send a jig, and not worry about, you know, hey, is this gonna get snagged? You know, we don't like snagging in the brush because obviously you don't want to lose jigs, but the other part of it is that if you snag, you got to go over there, and you've already identified that spot over there, wherever over there is, as a spot that you believe, hey, there's going to be a fish. You don't want to be in that spot if you can prevent it. So the right trailer can make a big difference in how often you snag. That's a better fish. All right. I knew this creek could make a few nice size fish and all these little guys. That one, I absolutely felt him whack it as I lowered it, and straight in the lip. I lowered it down the over the log, the permawood, as it were, All right, that one jammed it pretty good. As I pulled it across the log, I was focused on on what the line felt like on the log as I was pulling it up and over. See you, guy. And that focus of feeling with a really good sensitive rod, each little twig, knowing if you're on permawood or temporary brush, and that was definitely on permawood, makes a big difference. Your focus on that and feeling each little tumble coming across and knowing exactly when it breaks free and starts to flutter down. When it starts to drop off, you're already in that frame of mind where you're paying attention, because you're trying to do something. You're trying to give it line as it's, at the right time so that it doesn't swing away from the log. You want it to go under it. But focus is important. And that one felt good because I felt it free fall. And then I felt him go, pa! That was good. That's why we come out, isn't it? That's why I come out. All right, so let's talk about the right trailer selection to reduce snags in this nasty brush. You don't want your jig doing that, and choosing the right trailer is critical. I have 4 different trailers here that I use. This one's probably the most common. That is the Batwings 2.75. But I also use the 3.5. I definitely use that in muddier water because I want that bigger profile. But I use these trick shots. And I use, I forget what they call it, little Ned crawl. So if you were to arrange these in order of most snaggy here, least snaggy there, which ones? Which is your most? Let's go with most snaggy. Well, in order to comprehend what's snaggy and what's not, either you just trial and error and you figure it out, or you can actually play with the stick like what I got here out of water and look at it. And the thing that happens, well, I'm not even going to tell you. Let's do it. Let's look at what happens as the jig, and I'm going to use the 2.75 Batwings. We'll look at it, see what happens. So I'm just going to grab the jig that I've been throwing. It's been doing well, but it's certainly not perfect, and there is one thing that I can do to make it better. But look at what it does when it comes up to there. It rolls. Do you see that roll? This is what happens. Whoop. Ooh, it's exposing it to the side. What is it doing? It's, you look at the physics of what's happening there. And yeah, you're getting a little bit of a preview of where I'm going with this. You see the bristle guards? That's somewhere I'm going. But you look at what does that trailer do? If it's wide, it kind of deflects away from, it keeps that hook point from rolling, and it goes over, and you're good. So a wider trailer is better. It just gives you more of a chance of this coming through and getting past things. All right. So let's go back to our let's rank the trailers in order. Most snaggy, narrowest. Which is the narrowest? And I love this trailer. I'm not telling you not to throw that trailer. This is my go-to in the spring on the Susquehanna. That little trick shots that holds the scent really well, that has has those ribs in there, holds that liquid mayhem in there, and that paddle tail that just never stops moving. I think it looks like a Mad Tom. You put that on the on the Finesse jig, and they think, oh, little catfish I'm gonna eat. The TRD craws a little bit wider, a little bit fatter, right? A little bit less snaggy. And then you go to the bat wings, 2.75. That one's really good. But if I'm going really brushy, and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go with a 3.5. It's too big a profile for this super clear water. Look how clear that water is. I don't need all that claw. So we're gonna trim it. Let's do that. But most snaggy to least snaggy. And really the difference between these two is the width of the head. That width really helps me out. All right, got a little bit of abrasion there. I'm gonna grab my scissors and I'm actually gonna tie a fresh jig on because we're gonna do the little modification to the 3.7, or I was using the 2.75 bat wings. We're gonna put if I can find one, a 3.75 on this trailer. Where you at, big chunk? All right, so we talked about the width of this being a good thing, and the first thing I do, it has this little attachment part, and I break that apart, and we're trying to make that profile the same as this one. So I'm just taking my braid scissors here, and you get really simple. Just cut it in half. But I'm gonna actually try and make it look like a claw. I'm gonna put a little notch in there. Braid scissors do a pretty good job with this stuff. It's not easy to cut the Elastec, but braid scissors, I don't even know where I got these, but scissors designed to cut braid will cut Elastec very nicely. So just cutting that claw profile in half, and look, I made one bigger than the other. It's okay. They're like that in nature. I lay it on there flat, center it, poke it through where it naturally wants to go, and I don't really need to I mean, I can leave this hook exposed right like that because I got the bristle, but if you were wanting to just skin hook it, let me get all that stuff out of the way. You push it forward, you gather a little bit, and then you pull it back and make sure that that point is there, ready to go. All right, I'm gonna tie this on. Let's get this back in the nice thick permawood and pull out a big old creek largemouth. I'm gonna put one in there and we're gonna visualize what's happening. I can actually see it because it's very clear water, but you don't always get that opportunity. The water could be murky, could be wind on the water, but I'm looking at the line. I'm watching this bright yellow braid as it enters the line, and I'm gonna pull it back, and this part's important. I'm pulling it to the point where I can see it's maintaining its position, and it's basically, I'm gonna use my rod as the log. The jig is coming up to the edge of it, and once you feel that it's right there, pull it a little further and then let it drop. That is critical. I didn't do it well because I was demonstrating, but you get the point. I'm gonna see if I can do it again because I can see that log. I just cast barely over it. It's permawood. It's big stuff. I'm gonna pull it. Come on, get over there. Okay, now I drop my rod tip and follow it. Not so much that I throw slack in the line, but I let it go. I bring it up to the log and it clears it, and then you want it to go straight down because they're under it. They're under it. If you let it pendulum swing out away and hit the current and it's gone, you're missing bites. So visualize what's happening in there. What is, when is it up on the top of that piece of wood, and when is that critical moment to drop the rod tip and let it go under the log? Fallen, stopped. Slowly crawling up that piece of wood. There's a small one. Crawling up the next one. It's a bunch of small ones. Nonetheless, each time, each one I pop over, you let it needle down in there as it goes. That's a better fish right at the end of the day. Look at that. Oh yeah. I knew there was a big one in here. Let's get in there. Alright. All the way back at the where I put in, I get the biggest one of the day right on the last cast. Good way to end the day. I hope some of that made sense to you in terms of, putting a jig into brush. What's the best kind of wood to go after, which is the permawood, the big stuff. And maybe you can scale it up from this, creek fishing trip to, putting a jig down in 20-25 foot in on a big laydown on a reservoir, or fishing scrub islands on a bigger river. It's all the same concepts. The wider trailer, the lighter jig, and if you can get some bristles in there to protect that hook from digging in when it wants to roll over, all of that helps.